shake your cakes like dynamite.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Richard Crouse. That humming you're hearing in the background, that's my guest. You know the hits. I Just Want to Stop, Wild Horses, The Last Days of Summer, Black Cars, Living Inside Myself. The humming, courtesy of Gino Vannelli, who joins me in studio. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too.
Nice to meet you. You have a CD, DVD, Blu-ray combo called Live in LA. We're going to talk all about that. We're going to hear a little bits of that. I want to go back a few years, though. I want to go back to growing up in Montreal. I want to go back to when your father, Russ, was a big band musician. And I want to talk about what it was like around your house. Was it a house filled with music?
It was more than music, although there was a lot of music, but it was a house that had its own culture. My parents were first-generation Canadians. Their parents had come straight from Italy. And a lot of first-generation Canadians from the old country were doggedly determined to be different than their parents. Right. And so everything that you would have thought that an Italian family had, like, you know, Italian provincial furniture and purple drapes and things like that. And my father was like into Scandinavian skimpy furniture and white walls and marble and granite and all those things. It was almost that they were the fractious children, you know, of their parents.
And that was a decision. That was a conscious decision on their part, or was it just sort of culturally that's what happened?
No, I think that's just what happens when you say, I'll spread my own wings, and we're no longer the old country. We're in the new country. Let's go for the new country. So there was that element, and of course, you know, my father was a big band singer, and but more than that, he really was impassioned and loved music generally. And so we were, I think, the first people out of all the people I knew that had a stereo.
Right.
I mean, that big jump, that leap from hi-fi to you know, an actual stereo set where he had left and right speakers doing different things. You know, we were one of the first people, at least, you know, in our area that had it, and that was something for me. I used to come home from school every day and marvel at the sound of stereo, especially because it had tweeters and a woofer and things like that. And my father loved opera, and he loved classical music. He loved jazz. He loved Latin music. He loved big band music. So all those records, as soon as they would come out, he'd have. He and his brother were tremendous music aficionados in that way.
Without them, do you think we'd be sitting here talking?
No, of course not. No. I mean, if I was born under, you know, doctor's roof or a lawyer's roof, my disposition would probably be different.
So it is nurture, not nature, then, I guess.
It's a bit of both, because, you know, you have the predisposition. Because when I was 4 or 5 years old, before actually hearing a note or understanding a note of music, maybe I was 3 or 4. My father told me, I can barely remember this. I can't remember it. I was 2 or 3, and my father said, Elvis Presley came on the Ed Sullivan Show in 1956 or 57, something like that. I saw it. I took a tennis racket and started singing Teddy Bear. You know? So there was some kind of predisposition. But as far as I was concerned, I was either going to be in music, be a literature teacher, or join the Canadian Navy.
Really?
Yeah, either way I was going
to. And okay, well, music we get. What was it about studying literature or being a literature teacher or the Navy that appealed to you?
I loved poetry. Right. I loved the lake poets. I love the sound of words, the look of words on a page. And so I read poetry all the time and tried my hand at it when I was a kid in school, and actually wrote some love poems to some little girlies.
Did they work?
Well, I wasn't prepared for what was going to happen. But the Navy was because I loved adventure.
Right.
And I dreamt that your average Navy seaman, you know, would see the world and have a woman in every port, and you know, would be in dangerous times, and I mean, it just appealed to me that the sense of adventure would be there. So I guess I combined, you know, poetry and a sense of adventure when I became a musician, a traveling musician.
My guest in studio is Gino Vannelli. Right now, you can pick up Live in LA, a CD, DVD, Blu-ray combo pack that is available right now. We'll tell you more about that a little bit later on. When you were 15, you started writing songs. What kind of songs were you writing then?
Well, my first real mentor, although he didn't know it at the time, I loved Jimmy Webb and I loved Burt Bacharach, both of them. Maybe even, Cole Porter and Gershwin, because I'd been so accustomed to listening to those songs from the big band records and then jazz singer records. But really, in my time, the first time I heard some of the Bacharach songs, Walk On By, Anyone Who Had a Heart, that was in 62, 63. I said, now there's a good writer. And I thought that Brian Wilson was really a great writer because when he finally came up with The Warmth of the Sun and some of the other tunes that he came up with, I thought they really, really ranked as really great songs. And
God Only Knows may be one of the great pop songs
of
all time.
It's a great pop song, and so he really had something on the ball that was a little bit more than your average pop group at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a movie called Love and Mercy.
Yeah, I heard about it.
In theaters right now. I guess probably on DVD by now.
With Cusack.
Yeah, with John Cusack playing the older Brian Wilson and an actor named Paul Dano playing the younger. And it gives you a sense and a feel of what it was like to be Brian Wilson. It's not a biography so much as it is you walk away with the feel of what it must have been like to be him.
Yeah, I heard it's a dramatic, rendering of his life.
Yeah. Now, so for you, you're writing songs, just sitting in the bedroom with the guitar?
No, I'm pondering because when you listen to some of the great songs written, whether it be Wichita Lineman or something like that, or like I say, a Burt Bacharach song, people don't understand how much goes into writing a song. That it's really not the effort so much as the effort paying off after a while. And the study of language, the study of scanning lyrics, the study of what makes a memorable melody. How does the melody relate to the chord? How many notes should there be to the chord? Should the bass be a dominant bass, or should it be actually should there be a tonic in it or not? All those questions come up, and they color the song, and it colors the lyrics in a way that you have infinite amount of choices. So what choice to make? And of course, when you're a novice, you think there are no choices. Because the blank canvas doesn't speak to you.
Right.
But then all you know is you have a passion. And so you just start scribbling on that blank canvas and you look at it and part of you says, that's nothing like Bacharach. So finally you try your hand at it and then one day, you form a little thing that says, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And so maybe you catch a little sliver of it. And of course, there is a predisposition or natural talent to it, and some people have a natural talent to writing catchy lyrics or a catchy phrase or a catchy melody, and that's great to have. But you really, really need to educate yourself. So I studied music at McGill for a little while, and I studied drums for 6 or 7 years, and I studied piano, I studied guitar, I studied voice, and even with all the studying, it kind of gives you a hint. But the only real schooling is you spend the hours down there pounding away until finally one thing comes out and you say, now that's what I've been looking for.
Well, it's like Malcolm Gladwell says, you don't get good at something until you've spent 10,000 hours doing it. He uses the example of the Beatles playing in Hamburg.
Yeah.
Playing 12-hour sets in Hamburg. And when they emerged from that, and then all of a sudden, people start to notice them, they were fully formed, but they had done their 10,000 hours of work already.
That's precisely it. And I was, one thing my father, had trained me mentally for was that it wouldn't come easy. Mm-hmm. So I was prepared that it would take many, many long hours.
Now, there's a moment, your father was a musician, but there's a moment at which, in everyone's life, I guess, you sort of deciding what you're going to do. Am I going to be a doctor? Am I going to join the Navy? Am I going to be a literature teacher?
Yes.
Or am I going to be a musician? Uh-huh. And musician isn't the easiest choice of all of those things.
No, I wouldn't advise it, obviously.
When was that decision made for you? And did it seem realistic? Because I know there's a few steps between, I'm going to do this for a living and actually being able to do it for a living for you.
Well, I was in love with drumming because I loved Gene Krupa and I loved Buddy Rich and of course Ed Thigpen, who played with Oscar Peterson. I used to run home from school every Friday because at 4 o'clock on CBC, the Oscar Peterson Trio would be on.
Yeah.
And to me, it's one of my favorite moments of the week. And I used to love Ed Thigpen's, brushwork, but I mean, I couldn't help but notice, Oscar's, great pianistic skills. So drums was really my predominant thrust because I just loved hitting those things.
That's a teenage boy thing too.
It really is. And poor mom, I pounded her head. But it's not until I left the drums one day and I had a group called the Jacksonville Five, and I sang up front, and tried to hide behind the microphone stand. And I sang out a song until I saw the people actually reacting to me as a singer, as a communicator. Part of me, the young boy said, "Now this is cool."
Well, everyone that you talk to who has gone on to become a professional musician, and those who haven't, have that moment where they say, like Pete Townsend, "Well, of course I picked up a guitar because girls like guys who played guitar." And that's kind of part of it too, right? If we're honest with ourselves, maybe.
Well, you got jumping hormones at 14, and I'm not sure what comedian said it, but it's the worst age. I mean, you want to mount anything that moves, and yet you look the worst.
Yeah.
Your pimples are breaking out, you got blackheads on the tip of your nose, So, for me, though, music, it was just such a natural outlet that by the time I was 15 or 16, I knew that I was going to be a musician, a professional singer. I wasn't sure about how the singing would go because I was in love with the composition and the playing a lot more than the singing. It's not till later that I realized that I really could sing my own compositions.
We'll pick up that story with my guest in studio. Very excited to have Gino Vannelli here. His CD, DVD, Blu-ray combo, Live in LA, is in stores right now. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Richard Crouse. We are hearing the music of Gino Vannelli. The album, it's a CD. I still call them albums. I think that's just a part of my age showing there a little bit.
Well, it's a generic term.
It's a generic term.
My son's 29. He calls it an album.
Okay,
too.
good. So the new album, CD, DVD, Blu-ray combo is called Live in LA. It's in stores right now, and you can buy it anywhere that you can buy music. Gino Vannelli is in studio, and we've been talking about growing up in Montreal with a musician father, and we're just sort of at the point where you've decided, okay, I like this. I like singing in front of people. You've studied, you've worked. So you then have to take another step. Now, Montreal, as vibrant as it was in those days, didn't have as big a music scene, I think, as maybe you were hoping for, right?
Well, before I came to understand that, my father and I used to have discussions about how difficult it might be. I was very much a half full kind of guy.
Right.
My father was a little bit more half empty because he had his hand in it and he realized how difficult it could be.
Yeah.
I did not yet realize that, which was really, to my benefit. So I told my father, I had a wager with my father. I said, before I get out of high school, I'm going to have a record deal. He says, you dream. So I disguised my voice one day and I got myself an audition with a woman named Jocelyn Leblanc, who was worked in the publishing department for London Records in Montreal.
Which the Rolling Stones were released on London. This was a going concern.
Yeah. So I went to her, and I showed my stuff. She says, you're up and coming. There's something here. So I'll keep you in mind. Well, a few months later, she called me and said, come to RCA in Montreal. There is a executive producer by the name of Marcel Leblanc. I talked to him about you. He's interested, and just do a demo.
Yeah.
So I got out of school.
It was had to wait till the 3:30 bell rang.
Yes, and I with my books and all, I went to RCA Studios. And so I met Marcel Leblanc. I said, so do you need a piano? I said, no, I can do everything. So I went on the drums. I played some drums. I said, do you have a bass here? He said, yes, we do. I played some bass directly into the board, and I played a little piano, and I played a little guitar, and I did a couple of demos. And they said, let's ponder it. That was Friday night. Monday, I talked about it all weekend. And my father said, don't get your hopes up high. Well, they called Monday morning, said, you got a record deal with RCA Victor.
And you're 17 probably?
Yes, I'm 17.
Wow.
Yeah, just graduating from high school. And so we had a single out, and the single went top 20 in Canada. I said, you see, this is really easy. And then I realized, as I realized what the record scene really was worldwide, and how my record didn't even measure up closely to some of the records that I loved. And I visited all the studios. I came to Toronto. I came to visit RCA Victor in Toronto. I came to visit, I went to visit so many studios, other studios in Montreal, other producers, and I realized that what I wanted to do musically, Canada was not there yet.
Right.
This was 1970, 71, May 70. And so I went to New York, and I ended up, after a year at McGill, ended up moving there for a year. And I learned so much because I recorded with certain people at Columbia Studios. I had my first brush with Columbia. I had a kind of a 6-month trial deal with them. Right. It never worked out. I did demos for Capitol Records, for EMI, for Warner Brothers, and some pretty good stuff, but not quite there, but almost there. So it was another mentorship. And the mentor really was the business, the studio business.
And did you think at that moment, when you get your record deal, when you're 17, you say to your dad, hey, this is pretty easy. Famous last words, right? Did those words sort of echo in your head a little bit while you were in New York slogging it out?
A little bit, but I was too busy trying to achieve, the next step. And I realized how difficult it was because, you see, Richard, my greatest enemy that I saw in those days was not the record company, was not trying to convince people, was not all this kind of stuff. My greatest enemy or hurdle or obstacle was actually to create something that I knew could stand up as a world-class piece of music.
Right.
And that was really the mountain, that I needed to climb. And I was getting closer and closer, but I was running out of oxygen many times.
Well, it's funny because I think that there's probably a lot of people that wouldn't have gone for the world class, that would have settled for, I can make some money right now if I sing jingles, if I do something else. And you're shaking your head. You didn't want to go that way.
No. Because I'd seen what it had done to my father.
Right.
And my father still had a bitter taste in his mouth from either not going all the way or not taking it to that extreme. Because, I think we're born innately. I mean, the universe gives us our potential. Do we live up to that potential or not? And I knew that I had a bigger potential than I even could see in myself. I just felt it within me. And so by the time I came back to Canada, I realized that it would be a while before the studios, the equipment, the producers could produce the kind of record I wanted to produce in Canada. So in a roundabout way, by the time the 80s came around, I'm skipping a little bit, but by the time the 80s came around and Celine and all the Bryan Adams and all that, well, Canada all of a sudden became, a place where you could make great records because the producers, the studios suddenly got to be world class, but not in the early 70s.
My guest in studio is Gino Vannelli. The new CD, DVD, Blu-ray combo pack is called Live in LA, filmed and recorded at the Saban. Is it the Saban Theater?
The
Saban Theater in Los Angeles. Or Saban in Los Angeles, California. We'll talk about that in the next segment. I want to talk about going to Los Angeles. And when we come back, you had a fairly audacious way of getting a record deal when you went to Los Angeles and you wanted to meet Herb Alpert. There's only one way there's a lot of different ways to do it. You chose probably not the easiest way, but a really effective way. It's a fascinating story. We'll get to that, and we're going to hear some more of Live in LA. Stay with us.
Well, now the sun goes down on the Arizona plain, and the wind whistles by like a runaway train. Yeah, runaway train, a runaway train. The trees are full and green.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Richard Crouse. Gino Vannelli's new CD, DVD, Blu-ray combo pack is called Live in LA, recorded and filmed live in Los Angeles, California. We've been hearing little bits and pieces of it throughout the show, and we're having, what I'm finding, I hope you are too, a really interesting conversation about the beginnings of your career. I find it fascinating, that moment before it all happens, because you're hungry, you want it, and you wanted something big for yourself. And it happened, but it took a little while. And one of the ways was your mentorship in Montreal, New York. Then you go to Los Angeles and you set your eyes on A&M Records and Herb Alpert. How did you make that happen for yourself?
Well, I always wanted to be. Let me take another step back. I thought A&M Records was one of the best labels at the time because I admired most of the artists on A&M, which was, Quincy Jones, Cat Stevens, George Harrison had to deal with A&M, Carole King, and the Carpenters, Joni Mitchell, so on and so forth.
And it was run by an artist, and that makes a difference, right?
Artist and Jerry Moss. That was the A and that was the M, Alpert and Moss. Now, I have to preface it also by this time I'm realizing that, how will I get from point B to C? Because I had sort of gotten to B.
Right.
My feet wet. And I realized that my background, on the days where I thought it's over, it's impossible, everyone's telling me I can't do it. Everyone in the business says, well, I don't really have what it takes. Some say yes, some say no. How does a man find the strength, to keep going, to keep bringing out that potential? I rediscovered my own spirit. See, to me, the music business for me was a process of self-recognition, self-realization, in a way, enlightenment. Because if you don't understand yourself, if you don't understand what makes you tick, if you don't understand what brings the best out of you, then you're not going to do it. It's not going to happen.
Right.
So for me, sitting in that lonely room trying to write a song, I needed a reason. I needed something to lift me up. So I developed a certain kind of faith and also curiosity in the way things work in the universe.
Right.
And so it really increased my curiosity not only in music, not only in sociology, culture, history, the humanities, but in a type of universal religion. And how do I attain that thing called indomitable faith? And that was hard, another mountain to climb, because there had been many, many times when you come home and you're crushed. Mm-hmm. And how do you get up from under?
Well, is this kind of a way of giving yourself a certain amount of life experience as well, so that you have something meaningful to say? When you're 17, 18 years old, I'm not sure, and it's not the case with everyone, because there are 17-year-olds that have made amazing records and written amazing books, I'm sure. But I feel like you need to get out there in the world a little bit.
Well, 17 or 18 or 19-year-old doesn't have to say much. Just look good. And most people will be envious,
There's that, too.
So why I gave you this preface is because what led to the deal with A&M, the contract with A&M, was that I had been in Los Angeles for 4 months almost, and now it was the day before Christmas, 2 days before Christmas. And Joe tells me, we're out of money. The motel is costing $5 a day, this motel, and we only had $5 left to our name, and we didn't have enough money for food. We just had to leave the next morning, go back to Montreal after being there since I think the late August. Right. It was near Christmas, and I couldn't accept the fact that, I tried New York and all the doors were closed to me, and I didn't want to go back to Montreal and do it again. I said, there's got to be something here. Yeah. So one morning before we were scheduled to leave, our flight was at 1 o'clock, I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I walked down Sunset Boulevard, and as the song says, I stopped into a church. Yeah. And so I walked into that echoey little dome place, sat in the creaky pews, and fell asleep because it was so early. And I woke up at 10 or 11 o'clock being so vivid in my mind. as far as what I should do. I ran back to the hotel. It was called the Hotel Orange at the time. I grabbed my guitar, and Joe says, "What are you doing?" I says, "If you want to come, come." But I said, "I got to do this." So I went. It wasn't far. It was just about a block away, the Charlie Chaplin Studios, where A&M was.
It's now the Muppet Studios, apparently. Yeah.
So I took my guitar, planted myself right near the driveway where cars were going in and out of the open and closing gates. And there was a guard in the tower there, all dressed in his brown uniform. He came down. He said, "You know, you boys, you can't get in here without a pass or anything." I said, "I know." But I said, "It's a free country, right?" I said, "I'm right here. I'm waiting for friends." He pointed to me. He said, "Just make sure you do not come through those gates." So Joe said to me, "What are we doing?" I said, "Joe, I can't explain it. Don't ask me to explain it. I'm going to jinx it." So it had been 2 hours already. We've been waiting there. And suddenly, I saw this handsome man with black hair walk across the parking lot of A&M Records, and I knew it was Herb. And a little voice went off in me and said, "Now." And so I laid my guitar down, and I ran through the gates. And the guards started yelling, "Son of a you can't do that." So I knew it. Now, it just so happens I was lucky because later found out his name was Johnny. He had a terrible gimp from being a Vietnam vet.
And you could outrun him.
I could outrun him. So I did, by 10 paces at least.
You owe your career to someone with a bad leg.
Yes. So I reached Herb before he could reach me, and I grabbed Herb's arm. Now, I didn't realize, Herb told me this later, a month before his wife had nearly been kidnapped, so he thought this was round 2.
Oh, man.
So he was gray-faced, stone-faced when I grabbed his arm. He just said, "What do you want?" And I said, "What do I want?" He thought I was going to do some harm to him. I said, I want to be here. You know, I want to be a star. Something stupid like that. And then Johnny, the guard, grabbed me by the other arm and started saying, "You," started throwing epithets my way and starts hauling me off right in front of Herb. And really hauling me off. Big guy. And I turned around to Herb. I said, "Let me play one song." And Herb said, "Johnny, stop. Stop." He looked at me, paused. There was this pregnant pause, like, what is it going to turn one way or the other? Herb said, "Come back in 30 minutes. He got out a little pass. He wrote me a pass. And Johnny looked at me and says, "You son of a bitch." So I came back 30 minutes later with my guitar, nervous as all hell. My pick kept falling out of my hand. And I played him Mama Coco. I played him People Gotta Move. I played him Powerful People.
So these were in place already?
Already. These songs, written songs.
Wow.
And Crazy Life. And he looked at me and says, "Interesting." Then he looked down and says, "Welcome to the family." And the next day we went home. It was the day before Christmas.
Wow. So that's not only the best Christmas present you ever had, but did you really think that was going to work?
That's why I'm trying to tell you there's this element of how an artist or someone who's on their own trying to achieve a goal when it's an empty canvas. Yeah. There's a darkness in front of you. Who's going to paint the picture for you? So you need to go deep into that well. And however you find that strength to paint the picture, that's up to you.
Yeah. It's an incredible story, and it's one that I'm not sure would happen today, just because everything's different now.
But trust me, there would be a version of it.
There's a version of it.
Yes.
There's a version of it. Well, when we come back, we're going to continue talking. We're also going to talk with Gino Vannelli about Live in L.A. It's a CD, DVD, Blu-ray combo. It's available wherever you buy fine music and movies. And I want to talk about that, the recording of that. Have to talk about the songs that are on this, because the songs that are on this, quite honestly, are the soundtrack of a lot of people's lives. And that has to give you a little tingle. Does it give you a tingle when you know that your music has really affected people?
Well, I feel like a cook that's cooked a good meal and everyone says, "This is great."
Well, we will continue my conversation with Gino Vannelli when we come back. Please stay with us.
When I think about those nights in Montreal, I get the sweetest thoughts of you and me.
Welcome back, everybody. My name is Richard Crouse. In studio, we have a legend. We have a man whose music seems to have been with me my whole life. And just to hear you rattle off some of the song titles that you did in the last segment automatically makes pictures in my head. And I think back to a transistor radio, growing up in Nova Scotia with a transistor radio and your music pouring out of it. And it is something to have a career that has had the width and breadth of yours, and to be celebrating it now with Live in LA, a new CD, DVD, Blu-ray combo pack that's coming out. It's a look back, but it's also very much a look to the future as well. It is what you're doing right now.
Here's the lesson I think that everyone should take away from this: that even after selling close to 10 million records, having top 5 hits, having platinum albums, multiple awards, all the apparent success that many people pine for, after all that, not being in LA for maybe almost 20 years, and it was just by happenstance, nobody wanted to book me.
Really?
So one thing, other artists and people are, I want to speak to people that are not only in the music business, but are in the business of life, finding happiness, trying to find their potential, trying to make it work. That there was another hurdle to climb. Even after all these years, the hurdles keep coming. There's never a hurdle-free episode in life. And so I kind of shook my head and I said, this is typical. I said, I've sold out the LA Forum, in 1980. I've done multiple dates there that were so successful at the Santa Monica Civic, so on and so forth. And I said, now we can't even find a promoter who's going to book me there. Well, of course, my brother Ross is a doggedly determined guy like I am.
He's in the next room.
So he found someone at the Saban Theater who wanted to do the date. Well, not only did the date sell out very, very quickly, I'm very happy. I'm very, very gratified, and thankful that people remembered. But he found a record company, SRG. He convinced them to invest nearly $250,000 in making of something really, really good looking. This Live in LA. It's just not a casual shoot.
Yeah.
There were 12 cameras there.
Yeah, this is not cell phones, iPhones.
I mean, the Saban Theater is a beautiful historic theater.
Yeah.
And so Ross decided, this is the theater. This is what we should show what you are now after all these years, because people still have an image of me, with the hair and doing these songs from 1979, whatever. And so Ross said, though there are, sundry images of you out there, there's no really one defined one.
Right.
So we got the shoot, we got the date sold out, and I'm pretty nervous because I realize we only have one shot at this. So I kind of give a pep talk to the band, and all my friends come to visit me, before the show. I haven't seen you in such a long time, and it's just something about it. You just get out there. You just forget about it all, and the songs almost have a life of their own, and they just start coming out of you. And that's what happened on Live in LA.
When you're singing songs that you may have written 20, 30 years ago even, what goes through your head? Does it feel fresh for you as it's happening, or does it take you back to a moment when you were in LA before you had a record deal and you're writing "People Gotta Move," and you're filled with hope, but you don't know what's going to happen?
No, you're at a different stage when you're rendering the song. Remember, writing the song, or as you're about to write the song, you're full of compacted or impacted emotion that just needs to be with a can opener taken out and pop out like a weasel.
Yeah.
and so if you get lucky enough, you can make sense of it and make a song. But by the time you're the performer performing it, it's quite technical. Right. It's like Jack Lemmon, I remember, once said, an actor really gets lost in the performance, doesn't act very well. There's part of you that has to monitor yourself. Right. So part of me is a little bit lost and enjoying it, but part of me is saying, watch this note. No, don't watch your chest. Don't move this way, because if you move this way, you can't get the note out right. And there's all this plethora of knowledge that I've accumulated over the years, and that just automatically goes off in my head as I'm doing things, because it's just part of your training.
Yeah, and part of the 10,000 hours.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. And So this is in stores right now. In fact, anywhere that you buy music, whether it's online, Amazon.ca, all those kind of places, you'll be able to find Live in LA. It's a CD, DVD, Blu-ray combo pack, and you'll hear all the things that you want to hear and more. I Just Want to Stop, If I Should Lose This Love, A Good Thing, Wild Horses, The Last Days of Summer, Black Cars. It goes Living Inside Myself. It goes on and on.
Brothers on there too.
Yeah, lots of great stuff. There's a lot of great stuff on here. Take me back. We've got about 5 minutes left, and there's so much more I wanted to talk about. But take me back to opening for Stevie Wonder. That must have been mind-blowing.
Well, another one of those gifts. I had been recording Powerful People at A&M Studios, and I went back to my room, and it was a hotel or motel called the Hallmark, and a lot of people stayed there. And later on, as anecdotally, I met Marvin Gaye there. I met a lot of Donny Hathaway, a few other people there. Well, that weekend, I was frustrated, so I went to lay by the pool, and I closed my eyes and I started hearing, "It's a crazy life, a hazy life," and I said, wait a minute, I know that song. I said, wait a minute, it's my song. So I said, who's singing my song? So I started walking towards it, and like a bear sniffing a picnic basket, and lo and behold, it was Stevie and his brother, and his brother nudged Stevie and said, "Hey, there's the cat." And so Steve and I exchanged hugs, and we started talking about music. And, of course, I told him how much I loved his stuff. And he told me, look, Shaka Khan, he says, it won't be able to make these coming up 7 or 8 dates. He said, "Do you want to do it?" And I said, "Well, of course I want to do it." But I said, is your audience going to accept me? Right. And he said, "They'll love you. So don't worry about it." So not only that, I got on stage. I was really, a little fearful, but Stevie was very gracious. He even came out right before my performance and saying, "Welcome, Gino Vannelli." And by the time I got my sea legs going, people were standing up and giving me ovations. Now, by the time we got to, I think it was either Cleveland or Houston, I got a call on the phone, and the call was from Don Cornelius. And of course, unmistakably Don. He says, "Is Gino Vannelli there?" And I said, "You're speaking to him." And he goes, "This is Don Cornelius." And he said, "Would you like to do Soul Train?" And, I paused for a moment. And I one thing, that I took away with my family upbringing is that no matter how painful it is, be honest.
Right.
So I said, "Don," I said, "I have to be honest with you." I says, "I'm a white guy." He says, "Well, we at Soul Train here consider you off-white." So I said, "Can I ask you a favor?" He says, "Of course." I said, "Can I play a live version of it?" He says, "You do anything you want to do."
Because you would normally be miming to a record, right?
That's right. We did a live version of People Gotta Move. And I found that extremely gracious. And he had me there on Soul Train, I think, another couple of times. Yeah. And so it really got my career going. The gigs with Stevie that led to Soul Train, led to a top 20 record, and led to an album, Powerful People, that was a tremendous success for me.
We've just got a couple of minutes left. I'm speaking with Gino Vannelli. His CD, DVD, Blu-ray combo pack Live in LA is available wherever you buy fine music and movies. What's it like when Billboard comes out and you look at it and see, man, I'm in the top 20? Is there a moment like that, or is that something from the movies that I imagine?
I think artists, you have to be really wary of that. You do get weary of it in a sense, but beware, because if you gloat or take too much pride in good news, what are you going to do with bad news? Right. So you try to find an even kilter. You try to find the golden mean and not veer off to one lane too much. So I tend to take it in stride a little bit. And although I am happy with good news, I have to always brace myself for bad news. Mm-hmm. Say, this is not working out or that's not working out, so where to now? And once you accept that, the good news is just another chance to keep going on and to do the thing you love the most. And that's the training you get after years. After years in it, I hoped that I wouldn't become cynical. Right. I hoped that I wouldn't become road weary. I hoped that I wouldn't be burnt out like a lot of my heroes were burnt out, not only spiritually, psychologically, but physically.
Well, and you mentioned Marvin Gaye and Donny Hathaway,
Yeah.
both of whom aren't with us anymore.
Yes, I know. There was a burnout factor there. And that's where I think, in a sense, spiritual training came to me, because I knew that I needed to find a discipline that would keep me physically, ready for prime time all the time,
Right.
and psychologically ready. Because I think a lot of artists, I just ran into Alan Frew from Glass Tiger, and he had just had a stroke, and we've been talking about, how does an artist pick himself up again and keep going? And we all have our close calls. I've been in the business, from nearly crashing in a plane to getting pneumonia, being caught in a fire in the 21st floor in Dallas, Texas, nearly dying, and smoke inhalation, and then I subsequently got pneumonia from it. Then singing for the Pope. So all these really these extreme things that happen to you. How do you not get burnt out and say, I can't do it anymore? Well, there's this little boyishness that you need to find inside of yourself, the little boy attitude. Like, what was it like when I was a boy and I sang in front of that stage and I sang It's Not Unusual by Tom Jones, and those little girls were looking at me and I said, I love this, I love this. You've got to find that again. And however you find that, you find it. And that's the thing that makes it fun and impassions you to go on.
Gino Vannelli, we have to leave it there. That is great advice. I'm going to take that to heart. I hope our people listening do. I also hope that they check out Live in LA, the CD, DVD, Blu-ray combo, available everywhere you buy fine music, stores, online, Amazon.ca, all those sort of places. It has been a pleasure to speak to you.
Same here.
Thank you so much for coming in, and thanks to George in the booth.
You gotta move. People gotta move.